The alien marketplace was broken, just like her. Once, it had been full of color, sound, and life. Now, it was mostly dust, rusted stalls, and traders with cold eyes. Wind howled between broken buildings, lifting pieces of paper and ash into the air. She sat alone on a wooden crate under the shadow of a half-fallen wall. Her skin was pale white, almost glowing, her hair long and silver, tangled by the wind. She wore a black top made of some metallic fabric, barely covering her thin body. Her left leg ended above the knee, wrapped in rough leather. No prosthetic, just pain. Her right leg, booted and strong, rested on the cracked ground, steady and proud. Beside her was a hand-painted sign on a scrap of wood. It read, "Will work for prosthetic leg." No one stopped to read it. No one cared. Traders walked past her like she was trash. Some looked at her with disgust, others with amusement. One alien child even threw a rock at her, laughing when she didn't move. She had learned not to react, to only made them come back with worse. Her name was lost, even to herself. People here just called her half-limb, scrap girl. Or worse, she didn't speak, didn't beg, didn't cry anymore. She just waited, hoping anyone would give her a chance. She wasn't selling her body. No, she was selling her hands, her mind, her will to survive. But even that wasn't enough. Not for this world. Then he came. A human. He walked slowly through the market, tall, with worn clothes and a long coat that brushed the ground. His face was rough, scarred, eyes sharp but tired. A long rifle was slung across his back, and a tool pack hung from his belt. He didn't look like the others, and he didn't walk like a slaver. He stopped, not far from her, reading the sign for the first time in days. Someone actually read the words. She looked up, weak but curious. His eyes met hers and he didn't look away. He stepped closer, ignoring the stares from other traders. An old alien muttered, "Don't bother. She's broken, not worth your spit." Another laughed, "Can't even crawl, let alone work." The human said nothing. He kneeled in front of her, looking at her leg, then her face. "How long have you been here?" he asked, his voice low and calm. She didn't answer. He pulled out a small flask and offered it to her. She hesitated, then took it. The water was warm and tasted like life. "What do you want in return?" she asked softly, her voice dry and cold. "Nothing," he said. "I just want to help." She narrowed her eyes. "No one helps for nothing." "I'm not no one," he replied, standing back up. He looked around, then turned to the trader at the next stall. "How much for her?" he asked. The trader blinked, confused. "She's not mine, human. She's just sitting there like a broken crate. Then she's free," the human said, and turned back to her. He held out his hand. "You coming with me or not?" She stared at him, heart racing. Was this real? A trap? A game? But his eyes, they weren't cruel. They weren't greedy. They looked like someone who had seen too much pain and still chose kindness. "I don't have anything to give," she said. "You've survived this long." He said, "That's enough." Slowly, she reached out, taking his hand. It was warm and strong as he helped her up. The other traders scoffed and laughed. "Stupid human," someone muttered. "He'll regret it." Another said, but she didn't care. For the first time in what felt like years, she was standing on one leg, with help but standing, and someone wanted her to live, not just survive. As they walked out of the marketplace together, her sign lay forgotten in the dust, but the words stayed in her heart. Maybe someone had finally answered. The human shelter was outside the main city, past the broken gates and the sand-dusted roads. It wasn't much, just a metal container half buried in the hills, but to her, it looked like a palace. He opened the heavy door with a click and stepped aside. Letting her go first, she hesitated, her hands still shaking from the cold and from fear. No chains, no cuffs, no collar still. Her body stayed tense. Inside, it was warm. Not from any heater, but from a small fire burning in a barrel. Blankets were folded neatly in the corner. A cot sat on one side. And shelves full of tools covered the walls. She stepped in slowly, expecting something to change. Expecting something to change the door behind her and laugh like the others used to. But he didn't. He just walked in after her, set down his gear, and said, "You hungry?" She didn't speak, but her eyes answered. He opened a small metal box, pulled out a can, and heated it over the flame. A thick smell filled the air. Meat stew, not alien ration paste. She hadn't smelled something like this in years. When he handed her the bowl, she stared at it. Waiting for him to take it back, he didn't. She sat on the floor, eating fast at first, then slower, her hands trembling. Her eyes watered from the warmth and from something else she couldn't name. He didn't ask questions, not yet. He just watched her quietly, working on something on his table. Gears, wires, a sleek metal rod, and a 3D printed socket. Something that looked a lot like a leg. Her voice cracked. "Is that for someone else?" "No," he said. "It's for you." She laughed softly, but there was no joy in it. "I can't pay you. I'm not charging you," he said, not even looking up. "I'm not charity either," she said, more defensive now. He paused, then met her eyes. "I know," he said. "That's why I trust you to help me around here. Once you can stand." She didn't know how to answer. No one had trusted her before. Not with tools, not with jobs, not with anything. Only with silence, pain, and chains. That night, she slept on the cot, wrapped in a real blanket. He didn't touch her, didn't even come close. He just sat by the fire, staring at something only he could see. She watched him with one open eye, waiting for the mask to drop. It didn't. The next morning, she found him outside, fixing a broken panel. "Can I help?" she asked, surprised at her own voice. He handed her a tool and smiled. "Let's see what you can do." Days passed slowly. She learned his name, Reed. He never asked for hers again, waiting until she was ready to share it. She still didn't. Not yet. He taught her to use the machines, how to weld safely, how to balance small servos with quiet fingers. She worked from her knees, her one good leg braced, the missing one aching with every movement. Still, she pushed through it because now she had something to do, somewhere to be, and someone who didn't look at her like she was garbage. One night, while working on a new part, Reed spoke softly. "Your balance will be tricky with only one joint left above the knee." She nodded. "I can manage," she whispered. "You don't have to prove anything," she said. "You already did." By surviving, her hands stopped, her throat tightened. No one had said it like that before. She didn't know how to reply, so she just kept working. But her eyes stayed wet for hours, even though no tears fell. Later, she asked, "Why are you helping me?" Reed looked at her for a long moment, then said, "I've seen enough broken things tossed away." He looked down at her leg, then back at her face. "Some things are worth rebuilding." She didn't speak again that night. She couldn't. But when she went to sleep, she pulled the blanket over her properly. Not in fear, not to hide, but to stay warm, because for the first time, she felt safe under a roof. And somewhere deep inside, she thought maybe, just maybe, she'd be able to walk again, not for the world, not even for Reed, but for herself. She had been with Reed for 9 days, 9 sunrises, 9 warm meals, 9 nights without fear. But still, he didn't know her name, and she didn't know why she couldn't say it. Every time she tried, something stopped her, not her tongue, but her heart. It was like speaking, it would break something that couldn't be fixed. That morning, Reed placed something new on the work table. A thin metal plate, curved, shining, etched with soft alien markings. It wasn't just a part, it was hers. The nameplate from her original prosthetic leg. She stared at it like it was a ghost. "Found this in the scrapyard," Reed said, wiping his hands. It had a royal seal on the back. Then, without pressure, he added, "Yours." She didn't answer, but her hands shook as she touched the plate. Tracing the edges, it had belonged to her once before the leg was torn from her body, before she was left bleeding in a ditch while people argued about her value. Reed didn't press again. Instead, he returned to welding something in the corner. The silence between them was heavy but safe. That evening, she finally spoke. "My name was Vesha," she said softly. The sound of it made her flinch, as if the name itself had claws. Reed turned his head slightly, but said nothing. He didn't praise her, didn't ask more questions. He just let the name settle in the air, like it belonged. She sat by the fire, hugging her knees, her one leg stretched out, the other wrapped in fresh bandages. "I used to be part of something," she whispered. "I had a mother, a clan, a planet that didn't freeze at night." She looked up, the firelight flickering in her pale eyes. "They told me I was special, chosen for something great." She gave a small laugh, bitter and hollow. "Then the war came, and everyone who loved me died." Reed didn't move, didn't interrupt. He knew the pain of old wounds sometimes. Silence helped more than words. "They took my leg because they thought the tech was worth something," she said, voice flat now. "Sold it to traders. Left me half dead in the frost." She looked down at her stump, then at the tool she had used to clean metal earlier. "I wanted to die for a long time." The fire cracked loudly, but Reed still said nothing. She appreciated that more than she could say. "But I didn't," she added, after a long pause. "Not because I was brave, just because I couldn't stop breathing." Reed finally spoke, his voice steady. "Sometimes, that's enough." Vesha blinked at him. "Enough," she repeated, confused. He nodded, to keep going. "Even when everything's been ripped from you." He stared into the fire now, his hands folded in front of him. "You survived what others wouldn't." She wanted to believe him, but part of her still saw herself as broken, unwanted, left behind. That night, she had a dream. She was standing in a golden city, her legs whole, her body dressed in shining robes, but no one looked at her. They all passed by. Just like in the marketplace, when she looked down. She saw that one of her legs was fake. It glowed silver and then melted away into dust. She fell, screaming, as the ground crumbled beneath her. She woke up, gasping, sweat on her brow, heart racing. Reed was nearby, watching her from across the room. "Bad dream?" he asked quietly. She nodded. Unable to speak, he passed her a warm cloth, and she wiped her face. "You're safe here," he said, and went back to sleep without another word. But the dream stayed with her, and when she held the metal nameplate, the next morning, she didn't cry. She took a deep breath and whispered her name again. Vesha. Not the broken girl from the market. Not the royal child from a lost house. Just Vesha, trying to be whole again, and Reed. He hadn't saved her. He'd given her the chance to save herself. The leg was almost ready. Reed had crafted the socket to match her frame perfectly. Every wire was tested, every servo tuned. Only one part was missing, a rare balance core that couldn't be printed, copied, or faked without it. The leg would collapse under weight. Reed had searched all local junkyards, but no one had it. Until one name came up, whispered in back alleys like a cursed devourer. "Are you sure he's safe?" Vesha asked, watching Reed pack his tool bag. "No," Reed said plainly, "but he's the only one who has what you need." They traveled by foot and hovercart across dusty lands until they reached an old freight station. It was no longer a station, it was now Davor's domain. Scrap towers rose like metal trees, and the smell of oil mixed with rotting plastic. Devore was big, part machine, with a red cyber eye and fingers like pincers. He greeted them with a wide grin full of broken teeth. Well, a human. And an orphaned half-breed, he chuckled. Vesha tensed, but stayed close to Reed. We're here for a balanced core, Reed said, placing a sealed pouch of credits on the table. Devore picked it up, shook it, then tossed it back like garbage. Credits bore me, he said, but I see something I like. His eyes turned to Vesha, slow and greedy. I remember her kind, from the noble class. Soft-skinned and stubborn, he stepped forward. I'll give you the part, human. In exchange for her, Reed's jaw tightened. Vesha didn't speak. She had heard words like this before. Too many times, she waited for the familiar sting of betrayal, waited for Reed to glance at her, consider it, maybe even say something cold, like deal. But he didn't. He walked around Davor's table, grabbed the balanced core in one hand, and said, she's not yours to take. Davor's cyber eye flared. You steal from me. Reed raised a finger. You offered a deal, he said calmly, and I'm refusing it, which means this part is mine now, in trade for nothing, Devore growled, slamming a fist into a nearby crate, splintering it. You'll walk out of here with that piece and I'll make sure your body never walks again. Behind Devore, guards began to move, heavy-footed and armored. Reed pulled out something from his coat, small and silent. A shock pulse grenade. Freshly primed. Or, Reed said quietly, I press this and none of us walk. The guards paused, unsure. Vesha's heart raced as the lights flickered under the tension. Davor's grin slowly returned. Wider this time. Still got that Earthguard madness in you, huh? He said with a raspy laugh. He waved his hand, signaling the guards to step back. Go then, thief, take your broken girl and your ticking toy. Reed nodded once and walked backward, pulling Vesha with him. They didn't run, didn't speak, until they were far past the scrap towers. Only then did Vesha finally let out a breath she had been holding since Davor's first word. You risked your life, she said quietly. He looked at her, serious and calm. I won't trade a person for a part, he said. You're not property. She looked down at the part in his hands. You could have let me go, she whispered. But I didn't, Reed said, because I see you. Vesha's throat tightened. In all her time wandering, hiding, begging, no one had seen her. Not like this. When they reached the shelter, Reed began working immediately. Sparks flew again, tools buzzed, and the new balance core slid into place perfectly. The leg was complete, beautiful, strong, and ready. But Vesha wasn't sure if she was. Tomorrow, Reed said as he covered the leg with cloth. You'll walk again. She sat by the fire in silence, staring at the place where her body ended and a new part of her life would begin, and somewhere deep inside her chest, she didn't feel broken. She felt dangerous. The metal leg lay on the table, wrapped in dark cloth. It looked more like a weapon than a limb, sleek, strong, perfectly shaped for her frame. Reed had worked through the night, tweaking each sensor, testing every servo, and now it was time. Vesha sat on the edge of the cot, her hands pressed tightly against her thighs. She wasn't cold, but she was shaking. She had dreamed of walking for years, but now that it was possible, a strange fear grew inside her. What if I fall? She whispered. Reed knelt in front of her and unwrapped the leg slowly. Then we help you up, he said. The metal gleamed like moonlight, polished and elegant, but it wasn't just beautiful, it was built to last. He had carved her name into the socket. Vesha. In small, quiet letters, her breath caught when she saw it. He gently lifted her thigh and fitted the prosthetic, clicking it into place. She winced as it locked into her flesh, but not from pain. It was strange, not like before when old prosthetics felt like cages. This one felt like it belonged. Reed stepped back. Ready? No, she said, Voice barely above a whisper, but she gripped the side rail and pushed herself up anyway. Her arms trembled, her good leg burned, the prosthetic wobbled under her weight, its stabilizers flickering to life. Then she stood, straight, tall, and balanced. For a long moment, she just stood there, stunned. Reed didn't move. Didn't speak, he let her feel it fully. Then she took one step. The sound of the metal foot striking the floor echoed across the shelter. Another step, and another. On the fourth step, she stumbled. She reached out instinctively, falling into Reed's arms. But he didn't laugh, didn't tease. He held her like it was the most natural thing in the world. I can't, she said, voice cracking. Yes, you can, he said. You just did. They tried again and again. Each time she walked a little further, a little straighter. Her movements were awkward. Robotic, but they were hers. She wasn't being carried anymore, wasn't crawling or leaning. She was walking. Later, outside the shelter, she stood under the open sky. The cold wind rushed past her face, and the sand crunched beneath her new foot. She laughed loud and wild, and the sound shocked her. It had been so long since she'd laughed, she had forgotten what it felt like. Then she ran. Not fast, not gracefully, but with joy. She ran in a wide circle, arms stretched, tears falling from her glowing eyes. Reed leaned against the doorway, watching with a small smile. "You're not broken," he said softly. She stopped and looked back at him. "No," she whispered, "I'm not." She walked up to him and touched the side of his face. Not romantically, not with desire, but with the kind of deep, quiet respect that only comes from someone who's been saved without being owned. "Why did you do this?" she asked. Reed shrugged. "Because someone once helped me when I didn't deserve it." Vesha stared at him. "You think I didn't deserve help?" "No," he said, looking into her eyes. "I think you forgot you did, that night." She didn't sleep. She kept standing, walking across the small shelter again and again, just to feel it. Every step was a whisper of freedom. Every motion a rebellion against the galaxy that had tried to erase her. And in the morning, she stood in front of the broken mirror on the wall, looked at her reflection, her scarred face, silver hair, hand shining metal leg, and for the first time in years, she smiled at herself. The sun had barely risen when the sound of engines broke the morning stillness. Vesha stood outside, adjusting the straps on her new leg. When she heard it, a deep hum in the air, too smooth to be a traitor, too heavy to be passing traffic. Reed stepped out beside her, eyes narrowing. He reached for his scope and climbed to the lookout hill just beyond the shelter. What he saw made his jaw clench. A black transport ship hovered just above the ground in the distance. Sleek, armored, and silent, it bore no trade markings, no flags. But the royal seal of the Varkari Dominion glowed faintly on its side. They hadn't come to buy. They had come to reclaim. Vesha saw the look on Reed's face when he came down. "They're here for me," she said, her voice steady. He nodded. "Looks like someone finally realized what they lost." The moment felt unreal just days ago. She was forgotten scrap in a marketplace. Now elite bounty enforcers stood at her doorstep. Reed pulled out a rifle and checked the power cell. "You can hide," he said. "I'll stall them." Vesha didn't move. "No," she said firmly. "I'm done hiding." The ship landed. Kicking up a storm of dust, out came 4 armored figures, tall and precise. They walked like shadows, cold, trained, untouchable. The lead one removed his helmet, revealing a pale face like hers. Same species, same silver hair, but his eyes were empty. "Unit 7 to 12, he said. "You are a registered asset of the Varkari court, prepared for retrieval." Reed stepped in front of her. "She's not an asset," he said, his voice calm but sharp. "She's a person." The officer raised a scanner and pointed it at Vesha. DNA and cybersignature confirm identity, he said. You were illegally salvaged and modified. Violating Dominion law, Vesha stepped forward, lifting her chin. I wasn't salvaged. She said, I survived. The officer ignored her words. You will be returned to the reclamation labs for repairs and reintegration, he declared. Reed placed a hand on her shoulder, ready to fight. But Vesha stepped past him. No, she said clearly. I'm not going back with you. You do not have a choice. The officer said, motioning to his guards. That's when Vesha pulled something from her jacket, a signal pulse. Designed by Reed in case of emergencies, she threw it at the ground. And a flash of white light burst through the air. Blinded for a second, the guards staggered. Reed used the moment to aim and fire, knocking a weapon from one of their hands. Vesha kicked another straight in the chest, her new leg slamming with full force, sending him flying. The officer growled, reaching for her arm. But Vesha grabbed his wrist, twisting it down and locking his elbow. No more collars, she hissed. No more numbers. They fought hard. But not smart. These soldiers were used to targets that obeyed, not ones that bit back. Reed dropped the last one with a shot near his boot, causing the ground to cave. Under his stance, they didn't kill anyone, but the message was clear. We could have vaporized them, Reed said, breathing hard. No, she replied. Let them go back and report what they saw. She limped forward. Standing over the groaning officer, tell them I'm not theirs. Not anymore. The officer looked up, stunned. What are you then? He asked. She looked back at Reed. I'm free, she whispered. The ship limped away within the hour, sparks flickering from one wing. They didn't dare try again, not that day. Not with her standing tall. Later that night, Vesha sat outside. Under the stars, Reed joined her, a fresh bruise on his jaw and a tired smile on his lips. Scared them, he said. I scared myself, she replied with a soft laugh. You never told me what you used to be, he said after a moment. She looked at the stars and said, something trapped. Then she looked at him. But now, I think I know what I want to become. He didn't ask what that was, because the fire in her eyes already said it all. The bounty ship was gone, but Vesha knew it wouldn't be the last. The Dominion didn't forget what it once owned, especially not someone who was born under royal blood, then marked as lost property. She stood on a hill above the shelter, her cloak wrapped tight around her. The desert wind brushed her silver hair back. But she didn't shiver. Her new leg stood firm beneath her, strong and silent, like her heart. Reed stood a few steps behind her. Arms crossed. You think they'll come again? He asked. Vesha nodded. Yes, she said. But next time? I won't run. She turned to face him. I need to leave, she said softly. Reed didn't reply, not right away. He just looked at her, the way he had from the first moment, without judgment, only understanding. Where will you go? He asked, to find the others. She said, there are more like me, broken. Forgotten, she took a deep breath, but we don't have to stay that way. She looked down at her arm scarred, and Thin Ann pulled a band of cloth from her pouch. 'Twas the same cloth that once held her will work for prosthetic leg. Sign. She tied it around her wrist, not as a memory of shame, but as a promise. Reed walked over and handed her a small data chip. What's this? She asked. Schematics, he said. Your leg, its systems, backup codes. She stared at him, eyes wide. You're giving it to me? You built half of it, he said with a grin. You should know how to fix it. She smiled, then leaned forward and hugged him. This time, it wasn't cautious, it wasn't quick, it was full, real, heavy with meaning. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For not treating me like something to buy. You were never for sale, he said. You were just waiting for someone to remind you. That afternoon, she left, wearing light armor, a satchel over her shoulder. And a clear fire in her eyes, she didn't limp anymore. Each step was full of purpose, each motion smooth and balanced. She passed through the same ruins where she once sat with a wooden sign. The place was still empty, still cruel, but something had changed. She wasn't the girl sitting on a crate anymore. She was the one walking past it. As she crossed the city border, a trader shouted at her, "Hey, you selling anything today?" She stopped, turned, and let the wind toss her cloak aside. The metal leg gleamed under the sun, her face sharp and calm. She smiled, not kindly, not cruelly, just strong. "No," she said, "nothing here's for sale," and she walked on. Not as a slave, not as a survivor, but as Vesha, the girl who once begged for a leg. Now walking tall across the galaxy, no longer broken, no longer owned, just free.